you hear us okay? Very pleased to be here with Paul, who is going to solve the future of media for us in 18 minutes. But seriously, we've been talking about how the challenges media companies face and the opportunities that they have. But before we get stuck into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got to Dow Jones? Because you have a tech background, don't you? What is your background?
Yeah. So for those that don't know, Dow Jones is a diversified media and information company, most well known for our publishing arm, which owns properties like the Wall Street Journal, Barron's, MarketWatch, and London Financial News. We've also got a B2B business, which has a number of product lines, Factiva for searching for content across the world of published content. We've got the Newswires business for trading on news and data, the risk and compliance business, and our VentureSource business. But I suppose, as a technology person, I joined Dow Jones for a whole bunch of reasons.
But you came from Google.
Came from Google and got sold on this great opportunity and came in. And it was really interesting what I found, which in fact wasn't the reason why I initially joined. And that's across all these publishing properties and also the B2B products that we have, all of this data that exists there. And on the Factiva product, we've got 36,000 sources of content, all the published newspapers, magazines, journals, academic journals, government records that anyone really cares about. We've got market data, 160 exchanges, 9 million financial instruments that we track for over 30 years. We've got the data on companies, public and private, that we license and do proprietary research ourselves, data on people, events through the Newswire service. And when you sort of look across all of that, there's a huge amount of data, 2 petabytes of data that we've got. And traditionally it's been sort of locked up in the products, and we're trying to pull that out of the products and make it available as this platform. And for someone coming from Google that's seen a lot of how to process data and analyse very large data sets, it turns out we've got some really interesting data sets to start mining and doing interesting things with. So part of the challenge is there is how do we not keep thinking like a media company and start thinking like a software engineering and computer science based company.
Which is a big change, isn't it? I mean, coming into how many years old is Dow Jones? It's an old
126-year-old company.
Right, and has a set way of doing things.
That's right.
And very old institutional brands that are leaders in their space. And you've come from Google where you're used to doing things in a certain way, and development happens rapidly.
That's right.
So what are the sort of when you got to Dow Jones, it was a different way of thinking, right?
Yeah. It's funny being back in Dublin. I used to live here 15 years ago, and I remember going on a trip up to Giant's Causeway, and I was trying to get directions, and I wound down my window, and there was a chap on the side of the road, and I said, "Which way to the Giant's Causeway?" And he said, "Well, I wouldn't be starting from here." and I feel like that's kind of what you step into going into a media company, particularly coming from a technology company, that there is 126 years of legacy in systems, and a company, particularly in publishing, that's all built as a business around deadlines and getting news out, that kind of filters through to the technology side of things, that all this software that's been built for deadlines over many, many years just accumulates a whole lot of technical debt, as we call it, but systems that...
Technical debt.
Yeah. So, they're things that you mean to do, but then you've got a deadline and you don't quite get to them, and then you never go back and address them, and it ends up in a significant debt over a period of time that you need to pay down. We sometimes joke at work that maybe we need to declare Chapter 11 on the technical debt and sort of start looking at, if we weren't starting from here, what would these systems
and wipe
look like,
the slate
and how
clean.
would we build this?
Yeah. So how do you do that when you've got you've got a lot of systems running and news to pump out? How do you innovate while ideally you'd be able to start afresh, but you have to build on those systems? So do you create a new common platform? What do you do?
That's right. So the big strategy that we're bringing into to Dow Jones is the idea of building this platform, and that's the way that we want to be building software and building products is building them out of a bunch of components, and you can think of it as Lego blocks, that we want to have all these Lego blocks that we can use to build the journal or the mobile apps that we've got, all the B2B products. And for engineers like me and software developers, those Lego blocks are what we call APIs.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is build a layer of APIs that expose all of our content in standard and accessible ways, so that we can build these products on top of it. So you can build that abstraction of services and APIs on top of the legacy that we have, which is what we're doing. What that means is we can build this platform and build products which solves for revenue, and then over time we need to work our way upstream and address all of the technical debt and systems and legacy that we have underneath that, which is exactly what we're doing. And these projects don't have an end date. It's not 18 months and here's your platform. It's,
right. Which you presumably you would have at a tech company, right? You'd have a start and a finish date, and that would be that.
Well, not necessarily. The trick here is to keep on making services available that keep on improving ultimately the products that you've got, and incrementally just keep adding on functionality and access to content and data and services that you need.
Right. So what else have you discovered working in a news organization, coming with a tech background? I mean, do you think that, is there more that news organizations could do with technology? Is there enough working in tandem with the technology side? And are news organizations doing enough with an eye on the future in that respect, or not? Multi-layered question. But
yeah, I think there's digital is here now. I think most news organisations understand that. I think what we're seeing is people are reading news and getting news differently, particularly on mobile, than they are on web and other channels. So, being mobile isn't just a technology thing. It's actually a whole company thing.
Yeah.
And we need to be thinking about how do we build these great products for mobile and web for people to get the right information at the right time, but also the newsroom needs to be thinking about how they create content for mobile. And that's not necessarily long-form content. It's content in more decomposed chunks that we can make available across all of these different channels that we have. So there's a huge eagerness for collaboration between technology and the newsroom at the Journal and across Dow Jones that we've embedded our mobile engineering team down in the newsroom to try and help share with the newsroom what the art of the possible is.
And did that go well? Was there tension? Or
that's going well.
It's going well, right.
Yeah, that's...
But that's a departure, isn't it? I mean, for the traditional news organisation would usually, people come and start trying to mess with the product. They'd be up in arms about it. But there's an acceptance that, there needs to be more sort of...
Yeah.
More collaborative working.
And more than an acceptance, a request, an eagerness to be more involved. And it's not just on mobile, it's also across, we've hired and have a terrific data science team in the technology group. And that team's working more and more and more with the newsroom. And recently we had what we called a datathon, where we teamed up reporters with our data scientists and data engineers.
Locked them in a room together.
Locked them in a room for 24 hours and to see what they come up with. And it's interesting when you put a constraint on something, what teams come up with. Although I think some of the engineering teams might have been doing a little bit of work coming up to the datathon. But it was really interesting. Out of that, we've got some new product ideas for the B2B side of the business, and from the newsroom helping to create new business ideas.
Right.
Yeah. But also new story ideas and using the troves of data that we have to come up with new stories and working with the data scientists on that.
And they welcomed this at the newsroom. I mean,
Yeah.
What about? The Journal won a Pulitzer Prize last year, I think, or this year for work done last year. Was there a data component in that?
There was. So. For those who don't know, that we won a Pulitzer Prize for terrific piece that we did on Medicare, and
This is an investigation into US healthcare.
that's right.
Yeah.
And the journalists did a terrific job, and all credit to them for the work that they did. But what's interesting about the names on the Pulitzer Prize was it also included someone from my team in the technology group, and I think there's something in that for these investigative pieces, and the next Pulitzer Prize I think is going to have more and more data scientists, data engineers involved in named on those prizes.
And when it comes to data mining and data analytics, what can a good data scientist bring to a project like that? What can they offer?
So I think there's a couple of bits. The way that we structure our data science team is into data scientists, which tend to be building models and using algorithms to build predictive models and analytic models. And then we've got a data engineering team that source the data and get it into somewhere where you can implement one of these models on it. So it's kind of both of those bits. So in working with the newsroom, it's, well, what problem are you trying to solve?
Right.
And then being creative around, well, where do we get this data? Is it from data sources we've got? I know in some cases we've had data engineers go and scrape internet websites and other things to try and get data that can help bring those stories to life. And then build these models on top of it. And it's a great reporter knows what a great story is, and I think a great data scientist also knows what a great story is, and that's how they're able to find needles in the haystack of these very large data sets.
Yeah. What about going back to the idea of a platform and the way newsrooms and the way newspapers, news organizations think about the end product? Is there an issue about thinking about different formats? I mean, do we need to think about the content? Do news organizations need to think about the content they produce in a different way? I'm thinking about pages and page formats for devices. I mean, is there enough of that going on?
Yeah, so I think publishers and newsrooms and reporters, and you can keep me honest on this, have traditionally thought about content by the page.
For the printed page,
for a page, and with the headline and images and byline and the article. And more and more we're seeing different places where we need to get this information. It can be a notification on a phone.
Right.
It can be something that fits on a small device in your hand.
A line on a watch.
On whoever knows what comes next, something 3D and augmented reality. But we need to get really good at putting our content wherever our users want to access that. And it's sometimes not, in terms of a page. So we need to think differently. Sort of the point I was making before around the whole organisation around how we can create content specifically for these different channels. But then what we need to do on the tech side is build the platforms that make the content available in more decomposed forms for these different channels, and you can pick and choose what you need for each of them.
But I know this from working in a newspaper myself, is that endlessly new devices, new formats. And I just worry sometimes that news organizations can be pretty static entities, and having to introduce that kind of relentless innovation that you'd get at a tech company might not come naturally to most news organizations. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right. But I think what we need to do is build for the future, and what we know is that whatever device the future throws at us, that we need to make this content available, and we need to pick and choose what bits of content will be made available.
Yeah.
We as a technology group can output from the platform the right bit of content that each device needs. But sometimes that means having humans, that in the newsroom that are picking and choosing the right content for these different platforms as well, different channels and
real humans.
Devices. Real humans. I know, that's probably a hangover from working at a tech company. But that's an interesting one of tech companies in Silicon Valley often think an algorithm can solve
all their
these problems.
Yeah.
And we believe that algorithms can be used to inform humans and to help curate content and bring that human touch to it. And I think that's starting to be understood more and more out in Silicon Valley. Apple News and Apple Music, not just using algorithms for their music suggestions. Right. They've got real humans.
So Apple News is hiring journalists to curate at the Apple News service. Twitter's hiring journalists. Google is hiring journalists. So there's a bit of a... So maybe the media industry can teach the tech side.
That's right. And it turns out scaling humans and scaling the sort of workflows, editorial workflows, and that we have is not a trivial problem. And it's hard. And Silicon Valley almost has a allergic reaction to anything that scales through humans. And why that's interesting to me, particularly coming from that world of knowing that's difficult, and particularly with the trust and authoritative nature that Dow Jones and Wall Street Journal and our brands bring, that if we can get those algorithms, which two people in a garage in Silicon Valley can do something with, so surely we can, and then marry that up with all these experts and people that we have in the newsroom, I think we can do some really incredible things, like bringing algorithms, data, and the newsroom together.
Okay. Well, we are the light's flashing. We're out of time, but
wow.
But Paul, thanks so much for being here. Paul Meller, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.